Drops some spike. Doesn't get prettier than that.
I don't remember it.
And a one-hand effort by Harris. Harris stabs it.
What is up, everybody? We are back. College Football Print Factory Show. We got Bruce. We got Bryce. No Big T this week. He was filling last week. Bruce, we're going over to you. College football's coming to an end, right? We got a couple weeks left till we get to the playoffs and everything. It's not completely over yet, but soak it in. Enjoy the weeks, and then it will be bowl season, which we know is always a fun time over at Run Pure. But Bruce, how's it going over there?
Hey, good. Going well. Just want to forget about last week and just kind of move on. It's a little rough for us. Slamming my head into the desk a few times, just watching that North Texas Army game. But yeah, it's a solid week for sure, especially starting tonight. We have a 72 total with UTSA and those North Texas fighting Mean Green. So looking forward to that. The rest of the games. There's even a solid 7-game night slate tomorrow. So it's going to be a good one. I'm looking forward to discussing it with you guys.
Yep, I'll be excited about that one. I did last week. I did give out the lock, right? The over 51 that hit. I saw some people on the show comment and say the show got us on it. So me wasting my time arguing and telling Big T, hey, play Iowa State, Kansas. It's the game. Mm-hmm. It worked out. And I had some exposure, not enough, right? I had enough to have a sweat, but I didn't have enough teams at the top to get me there. But Bryce, how's it going over there? We got you back after 1 week of a hiatus.
Yeah, I am traveling, so apologize for any sound quality issues we might have here. But all set and ready to go for this week. Looks like Bruce decided to shave off everything, get a mustache after last week. So yeah. glad to see. I was of use. I actually played Jalen Daniels in cash, so I ended up having a pretty solid week. But I was this close to playing Castellanos, in which case my team would have been absolute ass. So that's kind of the way it goes sometimes. You either have a really good team or a really bad team based on one 2v2 at the end.
Oh yeah, for sure. It was a fun week. We'll have to see if we can figure it out again this week and create some winners, which we will. We'll dive in. We'll talk about it. First one up, I do like this game. I will say, though, Clemson is kind of disappointing. I feel like the past couple of weeks, the games haven't popped off, I think, like we've hoped, one way or another. Going up against Pittsburgh, I do love rostering some Pittsburgh options. The problem is the pricing on Pittsburgh. It's just expensive, right? Can we afford the pricing that we have on some of these guys? We'll have to see. Cade Klubnik, obviously going to be a solid option. You got Yarnell in there over Holstein, which just expensive for him, right? I wish his price was a little bit lower. Reed, 9,600. Maffa, 7.3K. Both really good options that we can look at and have to be considering. Then you got Antonio Williams, whose price has gone up from being 5K earlier. Some of the receivers are cheap in this game. Bruce, I'll let you have at it, though. Clearly going to be a game that we want to get exposure to. It's a 52.5 total, not the highest total on the board, but there's enough plays, I think, where we have to have this game in consideration.
Yeah, our Clemson value guys are back on the slate. TJ Moore and Westco are both still cheap. Both are still getting snaps. They kind of failed us a couple weeks ago, but they're still getting snaps. Still very talented guys. 65% for, actually 61% for Westco and 43% for Moore. Moore saw 7 targets in limited time, with Westco seeing 5. So, those guys are still there. We definitely run it back with those two. Antonio Williams, like you mentioned, he's a little bit higher, but he's just seeing a lot of targets. Saw 8 last week. Brennan Stool's always in play. Got to check on the health of Kanata Mumfield. Saw him on a bike last week, and he played about half the game and sat out the rest. So him and Holstein are the big injury concerns in this one. So, if they miss, we'll get Nate Yarnell. Unfortunately, he's priced up, like you said. He's a good player. I think I kind of had him in best ball quite a bit because I love the offense preseason. You'll definitely see some ownership on Klubnik. I think him and Leonard are pretty close in ownership. Leonard's probably going to be owned a little bit more, but both are kind of similar players lately. Leonard runs a lot more, but it's a good spot for Klubnik for sure. Moffa's ownership is going to be low just because Klubnik is going to be up there, and he's priced up. He's been like 5'9", 6'5". Now he's 7'3". But the matchup isn't great. It is on the road, on the road at Pitt. So it's a difficult matchup for sure. Reed always has receiving upside. Clemson hasn't been great. So he's definitely a turn.
All right, Bryce, I'll go over to you to talk about this game. Clearly going to be a game that I think we have to have on our radar. I'm curious how much you'll have it in cash games, though, because it's a good slate. There's a lot of other good totals, but this is a 52.5, and it's two teams that we pretty much target weekly.
Yeah, I think Klubnik's a pretty solid cash play here at only 8.6. We wanted to attack the Pitt defense pretty much all year. I'm expecting some ownership here. Likely seems like it seems like quarterbacks are going to be less chalky than running backs, to me at least. Like there aren't like obvious quarterback plays. Kind of like last week, we had that Army QB, and then it was kind of up for grabs in QB2, and I kind of think this week is going to be pretty similar with Riley Leonard. So Klubnik's definitely in discussion for QB2. If you don't play him, I think Moffa's a great way to get leverage. I personally wouldn't play them together. Moffa doesn't catch enough passes, and they're pretty expensive here. A lot of the Pitt side for me rests on whether Holstein's playing or not. If Yarnell was priced down, like if Yarnell was $5K, I would be willing to play him in this matchup. If Holstein's sat, I want nothing to do with him at this price if it's him. Pitt guys in tournaments, they're just priced up so much with him and Reed, and there's really the two guys you want. If Mumfield sits, I think that who's the biggest direct benefiter? Probably Johnson and Lee, I would say directly benefit the most. So those would kind of be the two guys I would look towards. If Mumfield's back, it's really hard to kind of pick a Pitt receiver, and I would probably like to play Reed as a one-off here. But once again, he's 9.5, and I don't see myself getting a ton of exposure to Pitt. Clemson receivers kind of burned everyone last week, so I think it's not a bad spot to go back to them. Favors for the price. Once again, I kind of like Wesco. Moore certainly seems like he's a bigger part of this offense, and he showed it last week. Briddingstool's always playable at tight end, and Antonio Williams, I don't know if he quite has the upside you're looking for in a 6K play compared to some of these other guys, but I think he's a fine pairing with Klubnik.
Yeah, the one thing you said too with the Mumfield stuff, I agree. It's Johnson and Lee, just because Williams is going to stay in that same role that he's always in. So those are the beneficiaries. I agree with that. Let's get to Texas and Arkansas. Interesting game. Don't know how much I'll actually have exposure to it. I know Quinn Ewers, he's projected well, but 8,700. Do I want to spend my money on him? I'd rather play Klubnik, I think, for 100 less. You got Green there. He'll be back. He's 8,200. I'm not excited about him. Running back situation, obviously, Wisner's been pretty solid. You got Blue for 400 less. They're kind of splitting, so that's not an ideal situation. Isaiah Bond and Armstrong are two guys I think that will project pretty well. Same with DeAndre Moore. I know Bruce has pretty good projections on them. So those receivers could be intriguing plays. But, again, not a game I think we're, loading up on. Not a game that we're just going to love. I think we'll get some exposure to it. It's a 57.5 total, and Texas are 12-point favorites. Bruce, do you kind of feel similar to me with this game?
Yeah, it's an interesting game. Texas going on the road against their old rivals. The big thing is if Texas can run the football on this Arkansas defense. Most teams have had issues, and it is a road game. So could see the pass catching upside of these backs like Wisner and Blue. And, Ewers went off last week, seemed really comfortable against Florida. Didn't get much pressure on him. And, I think it could be similar here. Arkansas doesn't create much havoc in the backfield. And, when he's comfortable back there, he makes plays. So I really like Bond at 5K. He goes overlooked when he's healthy, and he made some crazy plays last week. I think he's a good play. Maybe not like a cash play, but like a tournament play for sure. Just because any of these Texas receivers can go off. Bond, you got Moore for 3,800, Helm for 3,100, which he just never gets a price bump. He had a big week last week. Golden is 3,400. Those are my main guys I'd stick to if playing it in tournaments. And then Luke Haas, 3,200. He's been good the last few weeks I've watched. He's just too cheap here. And then Armstrong, like you mentioned, just always a volume guy, 30% target share as well. And then at running back, you have Jaquindon Jackson, 7,200, back from injury, ex-Texas quarterback. They actually didn't want him, and he transferred to Utah and converted to running back. So, that's a good little revenge spot at home. Don't have much interest in Green, but I don't mind him in tournaments just because he does run. He is banged up, so it just depends on what he has. But I like Ewers in tournaments for sure with the receiver or two.
Yeah, I'm with you on some of these receivers for sure. Bryce, curious to see what you're doing with these receivers and see if there's any other options that you're interested in Texas and Arkansas.
I don't think it's a bad game for quarterbacks in tournaments. Wouldn't play either of these guys in cash. Get a pretty good total relative to the slate. Green obviously has rushing upside. Ewers has some cheap targets to pair him with, so I kind of like that in tournaments. Running backs, Texas's backfield's an absolute mess right now. If I had to choose a guy, I'd probably be Blue, but it's not really a spot that has any safety and has a ton of volatility. So, I would personally attack it, just kind of pick one of the guys and not play him a ton in tournaments or anything, but just kind of roll with one guy and hope you get it right. I would choose Blue. I could see Wisner. I think Gibson was more just because they kicked the shit out of Florida. So, yeah. Jaquindon Jackson's a decent way to attack Texas. I would just personally rather get it with the double stack with Green's rushing ability. These Arkansas guys are tournaments only. If you're playing Green, I would definitely stack him with Armstrong here. He's too good of a stack partner not to do it. Bruce's guy, Luke Haas, has really come on for them. I know Bruce loves to tout Haas here. Sadly, he's not flat 3K, but you still get him at a huge discount. And I think zero ownership because all the ownership here is going to go to Helm at 3.1. I think he's way too cheap for Texas. He's been really involved in the offense. Ewers obviously likes him. I think he's one of the better cheap plays on the slate. That brings me to Moore. I think Moore is a good cheap play as well. He just has a lot more volatility than Helm. I would consider Helm the safer of the two for sure. But Moore has just as much upside, if not more. And then Isaiah Bond at 5K. I think he's definitely in play in all formats. So I like these Texas receivers in pretty much all formats. And, that kind of makes me like Ewers as well. Plus, with a tough backfield to figure out, I kind of think that Texas comes in with more ownership than we might be expecting on this slate.
Yeah, definitely agree. Texas receivers seem like the strong option. Let's get to the next one. Navy and Tulane. I'm not excited to talk about Navy and Tulane that much. It's a low total, 50 total. There could be plays, obviously, because we know Tulane, typically what's his name always comes in at a ridiculous price. He's 7'6", Mekhi Hughes. I know you have a pretty good projection on him, Bruce, so I'm sure we'll have some interest in him on this slate. Obviously, you can pay up for Blake Horvath. I don't know if I'm feeling that one. You got Mensa as a cheap value. We always talk about these cheap value quarterbacks. I've beaten the drum. Cheap value quarterbacks, you got to consider them. I don't know if I want to consider someone like him in this spot if there's other cheap value ones that I'll be looking at. But, Bruce, who are some of the plays you're looking at here?
Yeah, this game's rough, especially after last week. It's tough to get back on that horse for sure. Just because, man, it's going to be a slow day if Tulane can't stop this Army or Navy rushing offense. So yeah, I think Horvath is probably a tournament play because of the price, man. If he was $7K, I'd be interested, but he did do some things a few weeks back, so I think you got to keep him in your pool for sure. He has 13 rushing touchdowns this year. Hughes is going to be heavily owned just because this Navy rush defense is so bad. Their defensive line is getting blown off the ball, and Tulane has one of the best offensive lines. So he's only 7,600 as well. So I think that's a good price for him. I have some interest there for sure, and especially a workhorse guy. The only way he doesn't get there is if it blows out, and these kinds of games don't usually blow out. So I have some ton of interest in Hughes there, but on the Navy side, it's tough. I think you can play Mario Williams on the Tulane side. I think he's good. Shaz Preston is the receiver I brought up a few weeks ago. He played a couple snaps this last weekend and scored a touchdown. He's a transfer from Alabama that's playing for Tulane now, and yeah, he looks good. I think he's a good sneaky option. I'll have him on the playbook as well. But yeah, not a game I really want to get involved with other than Hughes.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's Hughes or bust. Bryce, are you in the same boat? Kind of just play Hughes and move on, or are there other running backs maybe you'll look to? So 7-6, he's a good play, I think, in tournaments. I don't know if he's going to make the cash game conversation because it's not like the game of the slate. But what's your thoughts?
Yeah, Hughes or bust for me. I think he's playable in cash as well. His volume is just so good. 7-point favorites. I expect them to be able to stop this Navy rushing attack. Now, if they don't, Bruce brought it up. We saw how it went last week. It was ugly. North Texas guys did absolutely nothing just because you don't have the ball. Army will stay out, or Navy, or any of these teams will stay on the field for 12 minutes if they can. So, there's some risk in the play, but I like Hughes a lot as a play. If you want to run back, it has to be Horvath. I don't want anything to do with anyone else on Navy, and I likely don't get too much Horvath in this spot just because I'm going to be getting to other like 9K QBs, but quarterback is not very strong this week relative to other weeks. So he would make my pool, but not at high exposure clip or anything like that.
Yep, feels like a great week to spend down. I'm going to try to find some spend down quarterbacks as we kind of move on through the show. Let's get to the next game. We got the Buffs, man. Colorado, they're flying under the radar, trying to make the playoffs. We'll see if they can get there. That'll be a fun thing to watch. They're playing Utah, which is definitely a solid game. You got Shadir Sanders versus Zach Wilson's brother. This Colorado defense has been a lot better, so it's not really a team I think we're dying to target with like Utah options. Micah Bernard is 7.1K. That feels a little aggressive. I know Auguste wasn't amazing last week, but he's pretty cheap at 3.6K. Again, this is not an amazing game, right? If you look at the total, typically Colorado, they're in massive total games. This game, which I'm trying to pull it up now, it is a 44.5 total. So that's a lot of Utah dragging that down, in my opinion, and some of that defense of Colorado being a lot better than it's been in past years. And in a 44.5 total, do I want to play Travis Hunter at 9.7? LeJonte Wester's been great, but at 6.1K, am I dying to play that? Unsure. Curious what you'll have to say about that, Bruce, because, again, he projects well for you pretty much every single week, still projects well. Will Shepard at 3.6, he seems like an interesting value to get to, or a Dorian Singer at 5.1. So there are plays in this game, but I think it's mainly targeting the values, because when you look at a 44.5 total, do I want to spend 9K for some of these plays? No, but there are definitely some cheap options we can get to.
Yeah, it's tough spending that 9,700 in this game environment for sure. Utah's been good against the pass this year. They are giving up some explosive plays, which Hunter is good at. But he is playing 100% of the snaps on the offensive side of the ball every week. Same with Will Shepard for 3,600. which I love. LeJontay Wester's playing 97% of the snaps against Tech last week. So, I think I'd rather spin down and hope that Hunter maybe catches one long one and doesn't kill me. I don't mind Will Shepherd 3,600. That seems like a good spend. And then Wester, who's been playing great, 20% target share for him. On the other side, with Keithy out for the year, Dorian Singer should see a ton of targets here. I think Wilson really loves throwing to him already, so I think he's an interesting play. He's not super expensive, so you don't feel too bad spending up for him. But is he a better play than Isaiah Bond, who's in that same range? I don't know. But I don't mind him. I think Augustive has been really good. 3,600 for him seems too cheap. But again, it is a tough matchup here, so it's probably a tournament play only at that price. But yeah, I think it's just the receivers here for me. I don't want to play Sanders really in this matchup outside of tournaments in a stack.
All right, Bryce, 44.5 totals are not ones that we love to target, but I think there are a couple of values you could kind of cherry pick here. Are there any plays you're looking at here in this game?
Yeah, I mean, Bruce broke it down pretty well here for me. Shepard's too cheap at 3.6. I do prefer the Texas guys to him straight up, like if you had to choose like a cheap play, but I think he's a pretty close second and, playable in all formats here. Hunter would be like my tournament play. It's too expensive for him against Utah, but he always wants to put on a show, and I don't think this is a slate where like it's going to be that hard to come by money, just because like there's not like tons you really are really prioritizing spending on here. So I would definitely prefer him to Sanders. 9.7 is just too much for Sanders here in this spot to me. I'm likely going to have hardly any Utah runbacks. I mean, Colorado's defense has been really good. I would probably just play one off Colorado's here. I don't really like Utah in this spot, and that's not something I thought I'd be saying coming into the season. But here we are.
Yeah, tough game, and honestly, that like 12 o'clock window is kind of tough. Like, yes, there's some games here and there, but if I told you are busy, let's say you got brunch with the lady Bruce, let's say you got brunch with the family, you could easily skip those games and just say, hey, 3 o'clock window only for me. And I think that'd be okay. Like, I don't see any musts in the 12 o'clock window. Do you agree, Bruce? Like, are there any musts that people might miss?
No, I think you're right. Other than Hughes, not a whole lot there. Maybe Klubnik.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not saying I'm going to make all my teams for 3 o'clock, but I'll consider it.
Plus, there's only 4 games in the window.
Yes.
Like, I mean, that's like the smallest window we've had all year.
And if there's news, right? If there's news we're waiting on that like could clearly shift the slate like drastically, like that could cause me to even backload it even more. So it's just something to have in your back of mind, especially if you're like a 1 to 3 lineup kind of guy, and I don't know, it's not the worst idea. So I'll think about it. I will like this first game we talked about. It's a 57.5 total. It's Syracuse and Cal. I think it's a pretty good game. We know how good those Syracuse receivers are. I'll start there. Obviously, Meeks, Pena, Gadsden all have tournament winning upside. I saw Gadsden the other day was 1% owned and dropped like 25 or 27 DK points. Like, the tournament winning upside with these Syracuse guys, you just can't ignore it in tournaments. So clearly guys that you could play. The problem is it's a little bit of roulette. On the flip side with Cal receivers, I mean, that's roulette, just trying to figure out which guy's going to have a good game. I think you could easily play Mendoza naked, and I think that's perfectly fine. 7.2K, I don't mind him as an option. Running back-wise, LaQuint Allen is going to project pretty decent at 8.6. You got Jaden Knott, who's been frustrating, just like Ollie Gordon, it feels like all season long. They feel very similar plays. So for me, I'm looking at the Syracuse receivers, and I think Mendoza. Those are like the key guys I like in this game. Bruce, how about you?
Yeah, I agree. This Cal pass defense has been kind of good. They had issues with Miami's pass game, and they kind of run same kind of passing offense. So I do have some interest in Pena and Gadsden here for sure. just because if you watch the game last week that Cal had with Wake Forest, Taylor Marin actually just crushed him. I think he had like 9 catches or something out of the slot. And, that's where Pena and Gadsden play. So they are priced up a little bit, but definitely have some interest there in tournaments. The Cal receiver situation is rough. I think they had like 12 guys that had a catch in the first half or something crazy. But Tobias Merriweather stuck out to me watching that game. He had 11 targets. He's still only 4,800. He's a transfer from Notre Dame, really talented guy. I think he's in play for sure. Running back, it's tough to play Allen at 8,600, but the guy is just raking in targets. I've lost count last week, but I know he had a ton. You can play any running back against Syracuse too. We saw last week some freshman running back for Boston College had like 150 yards rushing while Ward was sitting on the bench. So I think Jaden Ott's in play here. It's not going to have a ton of ownership, and this Cal offensive line has been terrible, but I think he's a good tournament play for sure. If he's going to have a coming out party, it's this game here. Mendoza is one of the better quarterback plays on the slate. Syracuse defense is just horrible, so I have tons of interest there.
All right, Bryce, let's go over to you. I assume you'll maybe like a little bit of plays in this game, but again, it's this 3:00 window gets really good with a lot of different plays. What's your thoughts here on this game?
Note here, this is 3 and all the other games are 3:30. So might have some news rolling in like right when this game's locking. But I don't think Mendoza is a bad cash play. I mean, just look at his last couple weeks and his price. I think that's pretty solid. You're going to end up choosing between like, I don't know, him and some other guys for QB2, but he's definitely in the discussion and probably the cheapest one that I would go to here. Don't really see myself going below this. I like Odd a lot in tournaments. I don't have any respect for the Syracuse defense, and like he is like an Ollie Gordon type as to where like he's like a next level type of running back that like is going to get questionable volume because of that. But he can do his damage in 15 carries, or the coach can decide to just use him and give him a ton of work. I mean, Ott in seasons past was just an absolute printer for us. So fine going back there in tournaments. LaQuint Allen, 8.6K. He always gets tons of volume. Too expensive in this spot for me. Same with McCord. Don't really like those guys tons at these prices. Like Mango mentioned at the start, I'd rather just attack a Syracuse receiver here. Pena and Gadsden, would be my favorites. I think Pena has shown us a little more upside this season, so I think he probably continues to do that here. Cal receivers, little tougher for me. I would probably just play Mendoza naked, to be honest, in cash at least. If you're playing tournaments, I do think you should have Mendoza paired. And I kind of defer to Bruce on those guys. But I'd probably say that Hunter's my favorite at 4 or 5, and he's going to have like 0 ownership.
Yeah, definitely a good game. I think this next one, I'm curious to get your guys' takes on this one, because I think this one's it has the ability to be fun, or it has the ability to be really bad. It's LSU and Florida. I'm very intrigued how this game plays out. For one, I mean, I think this is a great spot for DJ Lagway. Like, LSU's defense is not good, right? It's definitely a spot that we can attack. I think we have to have interest in him. If Johnson is in, I would like him at 4-3 as a tournament play. I don't know if he's going to be in. And then you have the LSU side. You can pay for Nussmeier and Lacey. They're expensive. I'm not dying to get there, but I think they're in play if you have the salary. Aaron Anderson at 5.5, he doesn't seem like a bad option, but I don't know, Bruce. I'm kind of looking and just saying, hey, I think there's value on the Florida side that can't be completely ignored, especially at the quarterback position with Lagway. So what's your take on Lagway and some of these other plays?
Yeah, it's a home game for Florida as well. I think the LSU defense is actually getting a lot better. They hired that new defensive coordinator last year, and they look a lot better. But 5,400 for Lagway. I know he's not healthy. He can't be. With this hamstring issue, he's probably not going to give you much upside in the run game. But his receivers are really good, and he's a good passer. He's shown that he can throw the football around. So I'm interested for sure. The main news is this Montrell Johnson news. If he's good to go, he can put up a big score for sure. 4,300. Josh Williams at 3,300 is a good value. Florida's given up 29 points per game to running backs this year. Their defensive line isn't very good either. And he got 54% of the snaps last week. So that's interesting. Just a cheap guy. Durham is 6,200 and only got 29% of snaps last week. So I'd rather spend $3K less for that guy for sure. Receiver situation is kind of up in the air for Florida. Badger, I think, is questionable. So if he misses, you have DK for 3,400. He's definitely going to be owned. Dude got 8 targets last week. Just a good play. And then, on the LSU side, always Lacey Anderson, Mason Taylor. Chris Hilton Jr. Finally getting healthy is an interesting tournament play, just because he's a deep threat guy that they've kind of been missing. He's only 3,400, so I don't mind him in tournaments.
All right, Bryce, I'll go to you. I did forget Lagway was coming off the injury and it's a hamstring, and that is concerning, right? But I do think he's an interesting value that you could like in this game. But also, I do think this game could get ugly. So I think it could go one way or the other. It could really pop off, or you could have a really bad outcome. So I think the range is wide for this game. What about you, Bryce?
Yeah, I mean, the pricing kind of makes you want to like these Florida players. I mean, the entire offense is cheap. You get Lagway for 5.4. You get hopefully Johnson for 4.3. You get Badger 4.1, DK 3.4. That's a super cheap stack. Even if you want to overstack it, I don't think that's a bad option. Don't think I'm going to go there in cash. I think it's kind of risky. My favorite cash play here would probably be Montrell at 4.3. It's just too cheap of a price for him. I once again do prefer like some of these cheaper receivers to the Florida guys. Like I would take the Texas guys over them. I would take – who else do we talk about? I'd take the Colorado players. So, yeah, they kind of fall like behind in the cash game conversation, but I think they're right there in tournaments. Quarterbacks, I mean, Nussmeier, he's too expensive for me. I think he's playable in tournaments just because, he's easily stackable. Lacey's an absolute beast. I love playing him, but he's 8K. It's not like he's like super easy to fit in your lineups. And then I would probably cut it off there with my LSU guys, but yeah.
All right, let's get to the next one up. Purdue and Penn State, which Purdue's defense you can obviously attack. Penn State, they can be kind of frustrating to roster. Obviously, no one loves to play Drew Aller. He's not a fun quarterback to roster at times. Then you have the Allen and Singleton conversation. If Singleton is out, I know he's got that questionable tag. That'd be great for Allen at 4.9K. I assume we'd like him. I'll let Bruce talk about how that situation will pan out. And then Tyler Warren for 7.2K. He seems like a really solid play here if you have the salary to spend for him. And then, of course, you do have Purdue as a run back that they'll be in a trailing script and they have some cheap options. So I like what DK's done. They've just like priced guys where it's like, hey, you have to kind of consider Purdue because even though they're not in a great spot, they're in a trailing script and they're cheap all over the place. So talk about this game for us, Bruce. What are you doing?
Yeah, the main thing I'm going to be looking for is Nicholas Singleton's injury status, like you said, questionable. But he did practice full yesterday, so I think he's going to be ready to go. I don't know why you would lie about that if it's just Purdue. So If that's the case,
well, they did it earlier in the season.
Yeah, they did. You're right.
Who was it against? But
yeah, it was like a pregame situation, wasn't it?
Well, he everyone kind of thought he was going to play, and then he was padded out and just didn't play.
Yeah. I think it could have been Illinois or UCLA, one of those.
It was someone that was bad, like Purdue.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, they could. I mean, you just never know. I think it was UCLA. So yeah, if they do that, I mean, Tyler Warren's actually been running the football a little bit too. I think I forgot how many carries he got last game. I know he had a couple rushing touchdowns. He had 3 carries, 2 touchdowns for 7 yards. So he may be the better running back playing this game either way. 7,200. He got 11 targets last week. They may not need him here as much. Game probably will get out of hand, but I think he's a good play either way. He's going to have ownership for sure. He's just a steady performer against a bad team here. The only way he doesn't get there is if it blows out and he's not a part of it. So I have a ton of interest in him. Katron Allen is still interesting. He's going to have some ownership too. If Singleton's out. Drew Aller at 7K. I hate playing him, but it's a good matchup, and there's not a ton of value at quarterback this week. So I think he's solid. If I play him, I'm playing him with Warren or Wallace, one of those guys. Max Clare at 3,900 is my preferred run back if you're playing anybody. Fleming is also 3K and has looked better lately, but not great. Yeah, mostly staying away other than the guys I mentioned. It's not the best game.
Yeah, not the best game for sure. But hey, it's got to be talked about. Bryce, I'm curious if you play any Penn State. I do think the running back situation is the one that we have to wait on that news, and who knows if we'll get it in time. But what are you doing with Penn State and Purdue?
You're probably not going to get it. It's going to be Singleton dressed out, and whether he plays or not, you'll know after the first couple drives. I think Allen's playable against this Purdue defense either way. So, yeah, you're going to have to make your own estimation of that. I remember the week because I had Allen penciled in, like I was all ready to play him. I had a team I liked with him, and then didn't play him, and then was super tilted when Singleton just didn't play. So I could see Penn State doing that again. So it's kind of Allen or bust for me here at the running back spot. Receivers pretty much the same way. It's Warren or bust. If you want to run back, it's Claire, in my opinion. But even with Purdue priced down, I think there's plenty of cheap receivers. Like we discussed the Texas guys, we discussed Shepard, we discussed DK. You get plenty of good 3K receivers this week. I don't really think you need to go to Purdue for any reason. Aller at 7K. I said I wouldn't go below Mendoza at 7.2 in cash, and I would probably find the 200 to get from Aller to Mendoza here.
Mendoza line.
Yeah, it's pretty much the Mendoza line here. There's plenty of salary relief on the slate. I don't think you need Aller to do it. I don't think he's a bad tournament play though. Like him and Warren pairing, I could see happening.
Cool. Let's get to the next game. This is definitely one we'll talk about. Louisville and Stanford. Louisville's got a huge total. Stanford, I think Sabre has it at 39 for Louisville and Stanford for 21, and it's a 58 total. So clearly going to be plays here. At 6.7K, Isaac Brown, you see the price on him and you're like, man, is that getting too expensive? But I don't think it is against Stanford. Still think he's going to be a good play here. Tyler Shuck, we got him at 7.9K, definitely a good option that you could consider here in this spot. Corey Brooks, 7.7K. Chris Bell, 3.5. Lots of plays to like here, Bruce. What's your thoughts here on Louisville?
Yeah, should be a smash. Should be a smash spot for Louisville. I know it's on the road. They have to travel across the country, but Stanford has just looked terrible on defense, especially. I think they gave up 60 to North Carolina State, who hadn't done a ton lately. So I like this Louisville team. I think Stanford's off a bye as well. So Also, Louisville is also. So both teams are well rested here. I like Shuck a lot. Not sure what Stanford's going to do at quarterback with Daniels and Lamson yet. Pretty sure Daniels is going to start. Lamson will probably play some. Who knows there. But, yeah, Isaac Brown, probably one of the better plays on the slate. Under 7K running back. Just too talented here against this bad Stanford defense. Duke Watson also for 3K. He's played a lot lately. And, min price running back that's going to play some, can possibly score a touchdown in this spot. I'm interested for sure. Receivers, Ja'Cory Brooks every week. Ao Manor, also interesting at 5,200. Chris Bell going to start 3,500. Redmond even for 3,200. There's tons of good receivers in this game. On both sides, because Stanford's going to be trailing here, and Louisville's pass defense isn't the best. So I do like receivers on both sides, and we'll have a piece of this game for sure in a lot of my lineups.
Yep, definitely you got to get a piece. Bryce, I'm assuming you'll get a piece of this game. What is your thoughts?
Brooks, I think he's probably the easiest play of the week here. Brown. Isaac Brown, probably the easiest play of the week. Sorry, I was reading my receiver notes when I said that. I like Brooks too at receiver, but Brown at 6'7" is too cheap here in this spot. They're 20-point favorites. In cash, Shuck is playable. You can play them together. Brown does catch a couple passes here and there. It's not like something he's like completely allergic to, and you hope not to get screwed. It's a lot to invest in one game, quarterback and running back. I did it last week with Army, and it ended up working out, but you didn't need Udo at all. You didn't really want him. So it's more of like a safety play than like a total upside play, unless you're getting a total tonight at 72.5, which you're not quite getting here. You're approaching the team total here with Louisville being 20-point favorites. So, I think most of these guys are playable. But, yeah, I'd rank them Brown, Shuck, and then the receivers, of which I'd rank Brooks, obviously, one. And then Bell would be my preferred cheap guy. I do think there are other cheap guys on this slate, and the Louisville guys are more fragile. But, they should be able to do whatever they want here, and that starts out on the ground for me. Stanford, I don't want anything to do with their backfield. I don't want anything to do with this quarterback situation. The one guy here I really don't mind as a run back is Ao Manor. I just think he's a really solid football player, and I've touted him on the show before. He's only 5K. The game's not expensive. He can easily get you that 20 to 30 point run back that you need to keep the Louisville game competitive enough as to where these guys stand.
Yep, clearly going to be a good game to get exposure to. Let's get to Virginia and Notre Dame, which, Bruce, maybe I know Sabre sometimes has some weird totals, right? It's a 50.5 total. Virginia's projected team total is 13.5. Is that real, Bruce?
Let me see here. I have 14, so it's probably close, yeah.
Yeah, it's regardless, it's pretty bad. So Notre Dame is projected to put 37 points. I know Bruce has definitely been high on Riley Leonard, high in the projections as well over here at Run Pure if you are using those. So Riley Leonard's got a good projection. Jeremiah Love at 6'3". I think he's got tournament winning upside at this price and in this matchup. Kobe Pace, he pops at times just as a cheap running back value. I don't love that, but I can understand if he could pop up here and there. And the receivers I'm not in love with. I guess Bo Collins you can make a case for if you want a stacking partner with Leonard, but doesn't seem like you need stacking partners with Leonard. It seems like you just play him naked and call it a day. Bruce, are you playing any Notre Dame, or is it just too big of a spread for you?
Yeah, I love Riley Leonard again. He's just going to keep running the football, and you love that college football. You have a chance to play two quarterbacks. You can play two running ones if you want, and the upside is just unlimited. And this Virginia defense is not good, Riley Leonard is priced up here, but guy has 13 rushing touchdowns this year, only 9 passing touchdowns. He loves to run the football. I just think it's a great spot for him to have a big game, high team total. I think if you're going to play like a leverage play, you got Jeremiah Love there for 6,300. Got his 10 rushing touchdowns this year, and been playing really well. I think I've watched a few of their games, and he looks good. Xavier Brown for Virginia is the running back that's kind of came on for them. I think they like him more than Pace now. He's got a lot of run last game too, and I think he caught a touchdown and ran one in. So I think he's a sneaky value if you want to play somebody from that side. I don't think the game stays close, but he is cheap. Notre Dame receivers are kind of like Cal receivers. They just kind of rotate a ton. It's tough to pick one, but Bo Collins has been good. The Clemson transfer, I think he's a good receiver. Chris Tyree is a former Notre Dame receiver playing for Virginia, and he's healthy. Got 5 targets last week. He looks like a good player. And then Malachi Fields always is in play. Just tons of volume. But this Notre Dame pass defense has been really good this season, so I'm mostly avoiding.
All right, Bryce, any interest in Notre Dame, or is it just going to be an ugly game for you?
Riley Leonard. We've been touting him for weeks, and every week he's put up a good score. And, the guy's the ultimate goal line vulture. He's like Jalen Hurts without the tush push. He'll just keep it every time down by the goal line. It's awesome. 9.5 is expensive for him, but we've talked extensively about the cheap plays on this slate that make him available. So I think he's the easiest quarterback play of the week, in my opinion. Outside of him, it's hard to not see one of him or Love really getting there. It would be a 30 and a 20-point performance as to where it's kind of split. You could get middle and be like a Hurts Barkley scenario where they both get there. In college, that's a little tougher to do. So, yeah, I would probably choose one of the two and move on from this game. If you wanted to play anyone else here, it would probably be Malachi Fields for me. But, he's going to carry 0 ownership, and I don't think you need a run back with Leonard. He's so much of a running back that, they can win by 30 and he still gets, 40 points.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'll tell you this. I played the night slate last week, and I had 0 Jalen Milroe, and I didn't have a good time. So I'm sure I won't have 0 Riley Leonard this time around because of that. And I don't know. When I normally get enough Riley Leonard on the – he's been on a lot of night slates. I've normally gotten enough of him, so we'll see. I just like the cheap quarterback builds mainly, but we'll have to see what happens. And, hey, news could obviously drive us on a different kind of build. You never know. All right, Boston College and SMU. Kevin Jennings, 7.7K, which is a pretty nice price tag in this Boston College matchup. You have Grayson James as the other option. Cheap quarterback, but don't love him here. Rashad Smith, he'll project well, but he's 8.8K. Just depends if you want to play him or other ones or other options. And then all the receivers in this game, I believe the highest price one is Lewis Bond at 4.9K. So if you want to, play the con and play Lewis Bond, you can, and then just mix and match all these other cheap options. Bruce, how about you decipher between these guys? Because you know them better than I do. So are we playing any of these receivers that are really cheap?
Yeah, so I watched the Grayson James start earlier this year. It was against Western Kentucky, and they struggled all game, and he kind of put it together late, and they won by 1 point against Western Kentucky. I don't think he's a good quarterback. I think he's from FAU or FIU, one of those directional Florida schools down there. So I don't want any of these Boston College receivers for sure. I think Bond is probably okay. 41% target share last 4 weeks, but new quarterback. But the SMU receivers are interesting for sure. Roderick Daniels for 3,900 has been playing some running back too. Keyshawn Smith's been getting volume at 3,500. I think he played 70% of snaps in the last game. Moochie Dixon is 3K, and I think he got 60% of snaps in their last game, and is a big play guy. He can either get you 0 or 15 at that 3K price tag. So he's interesting. Matthew Hibner is the new tight end with RJ Maryland out. He's 3,400. He's a 12% target share last 4 games. So I think he's interesting. hard to play Brashard Smith at 8,800, even though he does have a ton of upside. It's tough to pay that for sure. I think I'd rather pay for like an LJ Johnson who has touchdown upside. I kind of give the ball to him a little bit more down there. He's a Texas A&M transfer. I think he's interesting as a sneaky value. But Kevin Jennings is probably the play for me here. 7,700 has some rushing upside. I'm sure Steve Boynton is somewhere, just getting all the laddering action in he can with Mr. Jennings. But yeah, that's about it. With no Castellanos, I'm not sure how this BC offense is going to move the football.
All right, Bryce, I'll go over to you. Talk about this one. Clearly, Kevin Jennings, I think, will be someone that's on your radar. So are you playing him and looking at other options in this game?
Yeah. I mean, I get about 20 texts from Boynton every Saturday about how much money we're all making on Kevin Jennings props. So I've been betting. I don't know if he's been on a main slate yet. I think it's just been kind of like the late night ladders. I think Jennings is playable at 7-7, flat out. Regardless of how much Boynton likes his props, I think he's a decent play here. Big favorites against a bad BC defense. I do think they score points here. It's kind of a question of whether it's him or Smith. We get a question about Smith. Is he too expensive? No, I don't think he's too expensive because you have super cheap receivers. Like, you can definitely get to him. I mean, he has 31 and 43 points the last 2 weeks. Is he overpriced? Yeah, I think so. I think a fair price on him would be like $8K, but a fair price on these receivers would be like $5K. So, he's doable and he's definitely in my pool. Is he going to make my cash team? It's doable in cash. I don't necessarily think he's like a must or anything like that. There are other running backs I'd rather get to before him, but he's right there in that 3 to 5 type of range for me. Smooth receivers, it's just so hard to pick out some of these guys. I kind of like the Dixon call from Bruce if you're looking for like a deep tournament play. I don't think he's going to be owned at all here. So there's plenty of guys to pair Jennings with. I would have him paired once if I was playing him. He can get there on the ground enough.
All right, let's get to the game I want to talk about. I want to talk about West Virginia and Baylor. I'm upset that Sawyer Robertson cost 8-7. That's the only upsetting part, but I do want to roster him against West Virginia. This game should be a good one. You got Washington, 6-4. I think he'll get under-owned at that price. It just feels expensive. You got White and Donaldson. There's a big price gap between them now and a projection gap. They're definitely two plays that people will consider. For me, the Baylor receivers, Cameron, Presley, Hawkins, Trigg, all four of them just make it easy to play Robertson, right? It's just an easy stack to be able to pull off. I'm sure you'll have stacks that have both of them together because of how cheap they are. And then, honestly, I don't want to play West Virginia receivers unless Bruce can talk me onto some of them. But overall, I think I just want to ride the wave with Baylor. I'm just going to keep playing them and call it a day. What about you, Bruce?
Yeah, I love the Baylor receivers here. They're just too cheap. Cameron's the most expensive at 4,700. They're just all too cheap. Their last game against TCU 2 weeks ago, Presley got 68 snaps out of 81, Trigg 67, Cameron 66, Hawkins 60, and then you drop down a little bit to Baldwin, who got 30. So all these guys that are so cheap, got the majority of the snaps here, and their target shares last 4 weeks. Cameron 21, Presley 14. And I think he missed some with injury. Hawkins 19, Trigg 17. So I mean, they're all up there. It's really, really cheap. West Virginia gives up tons of explosive pass plays. We've been attacking them all year. They do have a new defensive coordinator, and they looked better against Cincinnati last week. But I still think they're not that great. They had Sorsby throwing them the football, so that's tough. Tough for anyone there. He didn't look great. On the West Virginia side, receiver, receiver wise, I think Traylon Ray is probably the guy. He's going to have some ownership just because I think he's looked good. He dropped a touchdown last week in the end zone, and I think he's a solid play. Bryson Washington is, like you mentioned, is going to go under the radar a bit, but he's getting the majority of the carries here, and he's just a big back and tough to tackle. Gets involved in the pass game as well. Has 7 touchdowns this year, you like those workhorse guys in these games are going to be lower owned, and Baylor wants to run the football some, so I really like him. And Sawyer Robertson is priced up, but that's just going to keep the ownership down. So I think if you play him, you're going to play him with a receiver or two, and it's a really cheap stack once you factor in the receiver prices.
Yep, definitely going to be a fun game. Bryce, I assume you'll have exposure to this one. It's a 58.5 total, I think, or 59. It's somewhere around there, so it's super high total. What's your thoughts here?
I wish I was more confident in Green's health, that he was fully, if he was ready to go at 7-4 here in this spot, ready in the football, I think he'd be a pretty clear quarterback play, but I'm just not convinced he's healthy. So, even if reports say he's good to go, it's tough to trust some of these college guys sometimes. So I probably not going to play him in cash just for that reason. I think he's a great tournament play. If he's ready to go, 7-4 is way too cheap in the spot. I do like there to be points here on both sides. Sawyer Robinson's a little expensive for me at 8.7, but we get great cheap receivers here. Cameron 4.7, Hawkins 3.7. You can even go down to Bruce's guy Trigg at 3.1. I know Trigg's made us some money before. Of the West Virginia receivers, I think Clement's my favorite at 3.8. It's just a cheap game for a good total, and quarterbacks who are willing to run the football here. So, outside of Green's injury, I love the game in general. How much of it I get to, not really sure. It's kind of like one of those windows you're waiting on. And speaking of guys who had massive games, look at Washington's game from last week. He had 50 DK points. I don't really think you can ignore that. He's not a lock or anything, but I think he's a solid play. If anything, I think he might go over owned just from that one game. But I do think he gets touches here. West Virginia backfield's a little bit tougher here. It would be Jaheim White for me, but I would probably prefer to just play Garrett Green and hope he's not banged up. So, yeah.
All right, let's get to the final game of the slate. If you guys did good too, please hit the like. We would appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel, and you get to see when all the content goes live here. It gets pushed to you, or you could put take the notification bell off, and that way when you do get on the YouTube, it'll be at the top. You'll still get you'll get kind of notified, which is the way I have it. I don't get the notifications every single time, but it's always at the top and easy to find. Nebraska, USC, last game on the slate. Baby Mahomes, or whatever we want to call him, off-brand Mahomes, he has been not good. Dylan Raiola at 5.5K. But, Bruce, he gets the defense that everyone does well against. You could put Rubio Dimes back there throwing to Kurt, and I think they'd put up fantasy points. So maybe it's a spot to play Dylan Raiola. I think it's got to be in play. Then you got the USC quarterback, Jaden Mavi, and maybe you could talk a little bit about him. Woody Marks is 8.5, another expensive running back. That isn't a good spot, though, of course. And then the cheap Nebraska receivers, who I played a little bit this year, more earlier in the year, Nair and Banks. They are interesting values, I think, that you can't ignore. And then, of course, you have the USC roulette with Lane, Lemon, Branch, all these different guys. And I don't think it's a bad game to get exposure to, but it's not the game of the slate. So there's plays in this game, Bruce. Talk about them for us.
Yeah, a lot of change in this game. The quarterback change that you mentioned, Maeve going, starting for Miller Moss, and also Nebraska going to Dana Holgerson as their offensive coordinator. He's going to call plays. He's a Mike Leach disciple, so it's going to be an interesting game for sure. it'll be fun to see how it works out. But yeah, I find it really tough to play either of these quarterbacks. I don't really like Maivia too much. Watched him at UNLV last year. He's not too great. Raiola, I guess he's playable with the new offense, but be fun to see how he plays. I think if you play him, you're probably pairing him with Banks or Nair. They're both cheap. That makes up a cheap little stack there. USC receivers are tough to figure out as always, especially with the new quarterback. I can see him leaning on Lane a little bit just because he's a big receiver. Lemon is also solid in the slot. And Branch always has tons of upside in the slot as well. But he hasn't done much this year. Maybe the QB change will help him out. But I find it tough to play Marks at 8,500, especially with the new quarterback, and matchup is tough. And it's always tough to play a Nebraska running back. They have so many. So mostly a stay away game outside of the receivers for me.
All right, Bryce, is this a stay away game for you? Clearly going to be one that, hey, Nebraska and USC, there's cheap plays I think we could actually consider. Are you mixing and matching any of these guys on your teams?
I swore off this crap Mahomes he had like weeks ago, and my life has been so much better for it. Even with Dana Holgerson son calling plays, I don't want anything to do with this clown. Woody Marks is my only play here. So, yeah, I think he's a really good play at 8.5.
All right, perfect. So that's the slate. I don't know if it's like the best slate we've got, but it's not bad. It should be fun. I really like that 3 o'clock window or 3:30 window. That's definitely one I'm going to be targeting a lot more heavier. Bruce, you talked about it at the top of the show. Talk about the Friday slate, and then we'll give out the plays of the day. What are we looking at with the Friday slate tonight?
I mean, there's one huge game, UTSA and North Texas. It's 72.5 total, 1.5 point spread. So that should be the best game this evening by far. The other three are in the 40s. So you're going to see some big game stacks there. When it comes to the other side, it's rough. The other three games, it's a tough one. I'm in the process of writing up that playbook now. I think Houston has a good defense. Arizona, struggled on offense this year, so not going to get a ton of that game. I kind of like UCLA. I think their offense is getting better every week, so I probably have some interest there. Not sure what I'm doing with Wyoming, Colorado State, but I have a few hours to figure that one out.
All right, let's get the plays of the day for the people. Bryce, I'll go to you first. Who do you got? Who's your play of the day this week?
RPS special, Riley Leonard.
All right, Riley Leonard it is. Should have a pretty good game. Bruce, I'll go over to you next. Who do you got? Who's your play of the day?
I'm going to go with Isaiah Bond for 5K.
All right, 5K Isaiah Bond it is. We'll see what I know Bryce said the ownership would be higher on him. I think he's going to be lower, but I like him a lot. I'm going with Bryson Washington on Baylor. I want exposure to Baylor. I think he's a good way to get exposure to it. And I like just the onslaught Baylors. You'll see me all over them for sure. I was on the Kansas and Iowa State onslaughts last week. I'll be on the Baylor onslaughts this week. So it'll be a good time for me. I'm going to play some Washington. Hopefully you get a share of it as well. That's going to wrap it up for us. Bruce will be doing the playbook tonight. Bryce and I are going to go do the cash show now, so be sure to check that out if you're a cash game player. If not, we'll see you in the Discord talking college football later on. So for me, Mango, and Bruce, and Bryce, see you guys later.